fascists to dream of the man who came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. They say the prisoner of Spandau was a symbol of defeat. Whilst Hess remained in prison, then the fascists they would beat. So the promise of an Aryan world would never materialize. So why did they all come out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died? The world is riddled with maggots. The maggots are getting fat. They're making a tasty meal of all the bosses and bureaucrats. They're taking over the boardrooms and they're fat and full of pride. And they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died. So if you meet with these historians, I'll tell you what to say. Tell them that the Nazis never really went away. They're out there burning houses down and peddling racist lies. And we'll never rest again until every Nazi dies.
Woke up one morning and there were soldiers. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Woke up one morning and there were soldiers. The invasion had begun. Lend me your shoulder, we'll stand together. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Lend me your shoulder, we'll stand together. But I feel my time has come, and if I die here for the resistance, oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. And if I die here for the resistance, you must lay me in my grave among the flowers upon the mountain. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Among the flowers upon the mountain, let me rest among the brave. Someday the people will pick the flowers. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Someday the people will pick the flowers, and they will remember my name. This is the flower of the resistance. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. This is the flower of the resistance, and those who died for liberty. This is the flower of the resistance. Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. This is the flower of the resistance, and those who died for liberty. This is the flower of the resistance, and those who died for liberty.
Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab or will you be a man?
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Don't Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
I was born in the Dublin street where the loyal drums do beat, and the lovely English people walked all over us. And every single night when they tell come home tight, he'd invite the neighbours out with his chorus. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show your wife how you won medals down in Flanders. Tell her how the IRA made you run like Calvary from the green and lovely lakes of Gilshandra.
Hello there, everybody. How the devil are we all? Yes. Why is it all the cool people are dead and like all the bastards are still alive? Can anyone answer me that? Like, if anything shows that there definitely isn't a god, it's the last 48 hours, surely. All the cunts on the Epstein list still alive. Well, except Epstein himself, I suppose. And he was probably killed by someone on the Epstein list, I imagine. You know. Anyway, yeah, but dear old Dolly and Tim Curry both went. So, you know. Thank you for the timing on that. Kevin, who are you hoping to draw? Oh, suck my dick, Liam. I literally suck my dick sideways. Suck the farts out of my arsehole. I'm not even talking about it. Football's fucking shit. Pricks. I wish I knew. Thank you, Kane, for resubscribing, and thank you, Phantom of Black. Way too many cool people. Yeah, well, exactly, Phantom. Yes, thank you very much. We're on a hype train. If everyone if we get to the next level of the hype train, I will. What will I do? I don't know. That's much better than Gennaro Gattuso. What happened to that? Thank you, Phil Decker, with 200 bitty bits, who says the Cosmic Claw Gang Grabber only picks up decent folk because people like Rupert Murdoch are slimy as fuck. True.
The return of the sausages.
Why isn't it reading it out? It didn't read that one out. What? I ain't fucking know. Anyway, I don't know. Keep your fingers away from. I had no intention of defiling the heavenly corpse of Dolly Parton. Dolly did good things in the world. Wait, you support Birmingham? Yes. Yes, I do. Who the fuck is Anatoly Cherdenko? Yeah, we've been through this. I support Birmingham City, and it's an affliction that is incurable and will be with me till my death. Oh, because there was swearing in the thing. Ah, okay. 31 quid and all they had was terrible, wanky, posh people food. At what? At what? I don't know. First time in Birmingham, is not a single flat cap in sight. Well, because okay, right. The show you're talking about is not just from 100+ years ago, but is also more modern than the actual characters. The actual Peaky Blinders existed in the 1880s and 90s. And Birmingham, whilst it has not developed as much as some might like, and certainly as much as I would like, it has developed past that point. So it's not actually like either a documentary about the time itself or now. So I'm not into football, but I do respect people that stubbornly continue to support shit teams just because it's what they've always supported. But exactly, it's like, for me, Birmingham City is like dandruff or a massive cock, in that I've inherited them from my father, and there's nothing I can do about it at this point. They're just with me. They're just, like, I can't. There's good and bad in all of it, but like they're hereditary diseases that I've picked up that are just with me. None of them are fatal, so count my blessings on that one, I suppose. But there we go. Oh, Chidenko is the Curry character. Oh, the one place not corrupted by capitalism. Space. Except Rangers fans, they should get help. True. Although I've always felt with this, I sort of feel sorry for like Rangers fans who are like born with it, right? So that it's just a part of them, but they're not like raging fascistoids. Like there's probably like progressive Rangers fans, right? And I feel desperately sorry for them, because what the fuck do they do? Oh yeah, I'm not even starting with Celtic last night. I just, fucking four. You gave up a 4-goal lead in an hour. How? Did you literally die? Did you all actually fucking die? Don't even get me started. Anyway. Honestly, and not just that, but like, it just goes to show you the standard of the Scottish League is fucking pathetic. And I don't say that with any sense of joy whatsoever. It's fucking embarrassing. Because by far, Celtic have been the dominant force in Scottish politics for the last 15 years. Nearly 20 years now. And they got embarrassed by the fucking Austrian champions. What? They got humiliated. Oh, did I say Scottish politics? I meant Scottish Premiership. Sorry. Scottish football. Anyway. Yes, Vogel, Austria got mentioned because Lask, the team that's essentially someone trying to get a 4-letter word out of a poor Scrabble hand. Although not as bad as Jablonek or fucking Jalonia fucking Vobbly Bob or whatever the fuck it was that Rangers got beaten by, which is just a fucking Wi-Fi password. Yeah, anyway, Scottish football's fucking wank. No offence to the Austrian leagues, but like, Scotland should be able to compete with them, and they can't. Yeah, well done to Hearts. I suppose that helps the coefficient. No offence to the New Saints, or Total Network Solutions as they used to be. But yeah, the Celtic are clearly better than them, but that's, yeah, damning with faint praise, I suppose. Yeah. Like, there's the reason the Scottish national team have done reasonably well in recent times, comparatively to previous generations, is because all of their players play abroad. If they'd stayed in Scotland, they'd have just festered in, unfortunately, a very shit league. Are Lask even the Austrian champions? They were indeed, yeah. Last season. Now, to be fair, they were probably the hardest draw that Celtic could have gotten at that stage in the qualification process. But even so, they should have been able to beat them. And having beaten them very comfortably at home and gone 1-0 up away from home, that should have been it. And they fucking capitulated. It was pathetic to watch. Jesus Christ. Unbelievable. Anyway, but I mean, at least they are in the Europa League. That's something. At least that's a competition they can actually progress in. No offence, but they weren't getting out of the fucking group stage in the Champions League. Look at them. But yeah, anyway. What's up with that American flag flying over St Andrews? Embarrassing. Well, look, there's no humiliation this club won't go through. Yeah. Anyway, right. Yeah. So there's one main sort of thing we're going to take a look at in just a second, but I kind of wanted to do a kind of quick little bit that I might put up on the YouTube, because I'm kind of going to talk about a few little stories that, well, they're not little stories, but they're stories that I'll talk about for a little amount of time with a kind of wrap up. So I'll turn my fan off and I'll just have to sweat it out for 5 minutes. Boop. No, that is not correct. Where are we? Oop. There we go. It sounded like you were at a data center. I am very much not at a data center. So, in case anyone else was... So in case anyone was wondering how the Prime Ministership of one Andy Burnham, King of the North, was going, it turns out he's just handed the next general election to the Reform Party, in all likelihood. Yeah, because it turns out the change thing he was going to do, yeah, that's not happening. Like, seemingly at all. Yeah, he's basically the same thing that the previous guy, what was his name? I forget him anyway. The toolmaker's son, that guy. Anyway, it turns out he's basically the same as that.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Kevin Guevara Logan, you were going to stream yesterday and I waited for nothing. I was up till midnight, shame on you. Cheese tithe, cheese emoji,
Thank you. Thank you. I'll cut that bit out from the YouTube, I think. But thank you. I think I did post on the Discord, didn't I? Saying that I wasn't going to stream. Hang on a minute, I did. If you're not in the Discord, I can't help you. Where are we? Yeah, there we go. I posted at, well, to be fair, you stayed up till midnight. It was at 10. No stream tonight because Gareth Dennis had to push us back till Thursday because of IRL concerns. So, yeah. Join the Discord. Just saying. So yes, the rejection of neoliberalism that we were promised by Andy Burnham was a load of old bollocks. The very first test of this has been absolutely fucking failed. Thames Water, a company so pathetic that even Tories want it brought at least temporarily into public ownership so that it can be sorted out, he shelved the plans to even begin the process of nationalising that particular water company. Absolutely pathetic. The first possible challenge to his ending of neoliberalism, and he's flunked it completely and utterly. Because he's the same do-nothing piece of shit that the previous guy was. He's just a Blairite. And then, as if to say, he's not even just a Blairite, he's literally just a fucking Tory. Because another policy from the very same day, a rehashing of workfare. Yippity-skippity fucking doodah. So, we're going to have the exact same effect on the jobs market that it did last time. Which is basically to give free/slave labour to, in this case, Sainsbury's. Meaning they don't have to hire people over Christmas. So, fewer people actually employed, and a company basically being given slave labour. Awesome, super duper, thanks for fucking nothing, Burnham, you cunt. Like, it's so annoying. It's such a perfect distillation of the Tory view of things. This kind of workfare thing. It assumes that there's a problem with young people, not a ridiculous endemic problem with the economic system that we've been running for the last 40 plus years. It's not that the jobs market is broken, it's that young people aren't good enough, aren't enthusiastic enough, aren't experienced enough, aren't anything, right? And you can't even begin to solve a problem until you admit you have a problem. And he has talked a good game about how neoliberalism is letting everybody down and this generation of politicians need to fix it, blah, blah, blah. And he comes up with a David Cameron fucking policy as his solution to anything. It wasn't a solution last time. What makes you think it's going to be this time? Like, it's the same thing with disability cuts, which he's obviously going to try and do at some point as well. Like, I'm sorry, one more round, just one more, guys, honest. What, one more round of disability cuts and it'll enthuse the disabled to stop being disabled anymore. And they'll just go and get the jobs that aren't there. And then another example of this is, I don't even know where to begin with this. The regulator, a joke of a title for Ofgem, the energy quote-unquote regulator, are allowing a 4% rise in energy prices. So, at the exact same time that the energy companies are doubling their profits almost year on year, they're allowing a 4% fucking rise, the highest rise in 4 years. For a start off, if it's rising by 4%, it's not a fucking energy cap, is it? In any real way whatsoever. What it is a government endorsement of price gouging. It's the government legally allowing price gouging of the most vulnerable people in society. That's exactly what this is. And this is absolutely perfect boilerplate fucking neoliberalism. From Andy Burnham now. So well done, Andy. Well done. You've been given an absolutely great opportunity to do something, and what you have done is fuck all. So enjoy your tanking in the polls, which awaits you. The Burnham bounce was always going to have a little bit of a dip after a while. It wasn't going to continue. It was certainly going to plateau at the very least. It's going to crater. In the same way that it did with the previous guy. Now, to be fair, he's starting from a higher position in terms of personal rating. But that means he's got further to fall. And by fuck, if he carries on like this, he's going to fall. Jesus Christ. Here endeth the rant. I might put that up on YouTube. It's quite good. Anyway. Why would a Jewish man interview Hitler? Why would he do it? Maybe we'll find out.
How to show solidarity with Palestine. How to unite the anti-war movement, the climate crisis, and our wider socialist struggles. How to deal with media attacks. I could talk about these things to many, many people, some with more experience than others. But today, someone who literally needs no introduction is Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy, you have been one of our most requested guests ever since we started.
Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler.
To this podcast, so I'm very excited to have you in the studio. Thanks for joining.
Indeed. Sure about that?
Everyone wanted to see us in a room chatting. It's very good that we're able to have this conversation. And once I saw that you'd launched the Gaza Tribunal, that seemed like the obvious conversation to have. I guess if we start at the very beginning, because this has been going on for some time now, but if someone doesn't know, what is the Gaza Tribunal? What have you been up to?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on the programme. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased we can have a sensible and good discussion about Palestine. As you know, I've been involved in supporting the Palestinian people for a very long time.
Of course, Sainsbury's have given has given money to Burnham. Yeah, it's the same jobs for the boys shit. Yeah, of course it is. It's the same pay to play shit that it was under fucking Starmer. Maybe we should start calling him Starmer. I think that works.
Long time, and that's not going to change. We were worried that the emphasis was getting away from what we're here to do. We're politically active.
Well, I did invite Helena on to stream this as well because I thought this would be good, but she didn't get back to me, so I don't know what's up with that. I hope she's doing well. I hope she's just busy, having a good time. But I don't know. Either way, I'll be on with... by the way, I should have probably promoted this at the top of the show. But I'll be on with Gareth Dennis tomorrow and possibly Poshbird, who knows. And then I'll be on with Christy on Friday, so... She is done with you, Kev. Fair call. Fair call.
In Britain. Obviously, we've got total solidarity with the victims and the Palestinian people, what's happening to them. But it's also about changing the politics here and what pressure's been put on the British government.
She's starting a shift at Sainsbury's. Look, no offence. No offence. She's a bit younger than me. She's a bit younger than me, but I don't think either of us technically class as young people anymore. We're not like super old, but we're not like... When they talk about young people's work and stuff, they're talking about like, 18 to 30 or something,
So there's a group of us in Parliament from all parties except Reform who raise issues about Palestine and justice, and we keep doing.
Well, why would they? Because they're just the fucking the Reform Friends of Israel. That's all it is.
That. And I've been asking for some openness about Britain's involvement over the use of the bases, the weapons supply, etc. And so I introduced a private member's bill into the House under the 10-minute rule, which was calling for an open public inquiry in the same way that Sir John Chilcot's inquiry into the Iraq War was actually quite seminal. I wish it had more powers, but nevertheless, the information there was seminal. And so I introduced a bill under 10-minute rule, and that got through its first.
Bizarrely, one of the best in Parliament on this issue has actually been a Tory MP, which sounds really fucking weird. But Kit Malthouse, who was like a sort of a Tory wet, I suppose, so you'd expect to be super like pro-Israel, has been really, really passionate about like asking questions of the government about, well, like, what the fuck are you doing about Palestine all the time? It's odd. I don't know why. Like, it shouldn't be odd. Even conservatives should be like, maybe genocide is bad. Maybe we should stop doing that. But he's like the only one, really. Yeah.
First stage got blocked at the second stage, which was what I was expecting. And so through the Peace and Justice Project, we said, okay, we're going to set up our own Gaza Tribunal on the model of the Russell Tribunals about the Vietnam War in the 1960s and 70s. We then held it over 2 days in China.
Why are you watching footage from the Fuhrer bunker? Yeah. I can't wait for the bit where he slams the desk and starts going, 99999!
House, Westminster, last year. 29 expert witnesses. They were each given a specific area to talk about: media, weapons supplies, emergency medicine, and so on. And people on it were myself, Professor Neve Gordon from Queen Mary's University, who is a legal professor, and Shahad Humiri, who is from Kent University and is a lecturer there. Both are obviously incredible experts. He is Jewish American supporter of Palestine, and she is Palestinian Jordanian.
Oh, both anti-Semites. Oh, okay, cool.
And there's me. We took the evidence.
By the way, it's so funny to me. The obvious, I don't know if people have been watching the very, very obvious AIPAC-inspired, like, coordinated offensive against the streamer known as Azan. Anyway, he did 9/11 apparently, and this Hassan Piker chap apparently is the biggest anti-Semite ever, and pointing out that it was obvious that AIPAC got all of their fucking like stupid lackeys in Congress to all attack him on the exact same time with the exact same talking points. If you point that out, that's also anti-Semitic. It's like an Ouroboros of anti-Semitism accusations. It's never ending. It's only a matter of time before Trump mentions it. Trump already has mentioned him. Not the name specifically, but he was going about the Democrats supporting someone who said we deserve 9/11. So he's already, like, obliquely referenced him. Yeah. Oh, you mean by name? Well, yeah, we'll see. His brain's so gone now, could he even remember a new name? I'm not sure he could name all of his children, to be honest. For fuck's sake. What? This is just slander of the highest order. That is so grim. Bad. Bad! I feel like you need to be booped on the snoot with a rolled up newspaper for that. Unbelievable. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the Democrats, much like the Labour Party, you know, are obsessed with, like, the Democrats don't care if they lose the midterms and just lose in general, as long as Israel win. They have decided that their donors at AIPAC are more important than their own political party's chance of survival. And so enjoy losing all the time, you absolutely useless cunts. Bravo, you've earned it.
And a lot of people followed it online, and it was very well organized. And we then had the proceedings, which are interesting in themselves, but verbatim accounts are not necessarily a great read. So we decided we'd turn it into a book which summarizes the position taken by each of the witnesses, and they're all listed in the back of the book, and published it. And we've been doing book tours with it at the moment. I've been in Edinburgh, I've been in Glasgow, I've been in Bristol, and so on, all over the country doing it. I've got a lot more to come. And
hey, hello, Mixed Vivian Wolf. Everyone go and follow Mixed Vivian Wolf immediately.
And it's going very, very well. The point about it is to provoke and promote a discussion, a public discussion about Britain's complicity, because we can't get away with it.
What the hang on, whoa, what? How is it doing that? How is it changing from Beadle's face to my face? I can't scroll. What can't I scroll back on the thing? It's... What? Oh, that's amazing. I'm not even annoyed. That's incredible. That's actually... that's fucking awesome. Look, it face morphs into mine. Oh, that's dope. I actually love that shit. It always did that Kevin mate shop. You're just jealous because I'm buried in the same graveyard as Karl Marx.
I was invited.
Talking of great leftist minds, obviously R.I.P. to Dolly Parton. I saw a fantastic tweet, and it's absolutely true. That Dolly Parton could have written Das Kapital, but Marx could not have written 9 till 5. So, it's true. You all know it's true.
To the ICJ hearing in The Hague by South Africa, they asked me if I'd go along to witness and support what they were doing, and I said, of course. So I went there, and it was very moving experience.
Oh yeah, actually, it's like another one on the screen in chat. If you look at the Beadle thing in chat, I don't know what some clever bastard has done. It face swaps into me from Jeremy Beadle, which is fucking awesome.
I'm there in the Palace of Peace in The Hague, which is an astonishingly beautiful building. Carnegie built, 1920s, wonderful building. And I'm there listening to it, and the South African presentation was, as you would expect.
No, Phantom, it obviously didn't always do that. Sharpen that. Shut up and that.
Very high quality, very detailed, very legal specific. And then I'm looking around thinking, wow, South Africa is doing it. All those years they were fighting under apartheid. In solidarity, lots of us around the world supporting them. And their repayment is Mandela's words: our liberation will not be complete until the Palestinian people too are free. And I just thought, well done, South Africa. What's their reward? Sanctions from the USA. Restraint of trade from the USA. Attacks.
Yeah, the USA doing more to punish the opponents of genocide than they are to punish the people in the Jeffrey Epstein lists, you know. Although, and speaking of that, you know, the group that you can't say you support because it's, you know, illegal. Boop. Yep. The USA. Hang on. No. Fuck off. Go away, Guardian, you pricks. Yeah, the USA have made Palestine Action a terrorist group. In case you were wondering how cucked out America and Britain are to their Israeli paymasters. There you go. There you go. Yeah. So it might become illegal to say that you support Palestine Action in America very soon. It might be illegal soon. I don't know the exact rules in your particular jurisdiction, but the joke might also apply across the pond too soon. Oh, for fuck's sake! 255, literally too soon. Literally. Don't make us rename the Atlantic Ocean the American Ocean, Kev. True. What is this? Someone said it was gay 9/11. I have no words. I have 0 words for this. 0. Is that rain? That is really heavy. Can you hear the rain? The fuck? That is some heavy ass rain. Shit. I mean, we need it, but fuck my.
From the USA. So I've been involved in setting up the Hague Group through Progressive International, which is of countries that have been standing up in support of the ICJ and the ICC opinions.
Hassan Piker said America deserved gay 9/11 is an amazing amalgamation of memes. Fucking Christ almighty. Did you know Hassan Piker did gay 9/11? Fact.
And it's about promoting solidarity. This book demands action by the British government. I'll finish on this because otherwise I'm going to go on too long and you're going to tell me off.
No, it's
trying
all
to
interesting.
monopolise conversation. It is about what Britain does. We allow the manufacture of weapons in Britain by Elbit Systems. Britain has been overflying Gaza for the last nearly 3 years and passing that information, I believe, back to the Israeli Defense Force. We have been providing parts for F-35 jets, and there are no sanctions against the Israeli military. There are sanctions against some individuals, and there are sanctions against settlement goods, but actually it's almost impossible to separate settlement goods from Israeli goods. And I think Britain's position has been terrible on this. And whilst Burnham gave some warm words, they don't really add up to very much.
Well,
so this book is about changing the debate.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm really interested in your opinion about Andy Burnham's apology. Obviously, he said that Labour got it wrong on Gaza, but as far as we can see so far, there doesn't seem to be any material change. What would you...
MPs doing a podcast is odd. Why? Why would that be odd? Like, podcasts are, you know, as valid a media form as anything else. Yeah, why not? I mean, it might be like a new thing, so it seems strange, but MPs being on TV was strange once, you know?
Do you want to see the government doing differently?
Getting it wrong, fine. He admits we got it wrong. Good. That's a step forward. At least they said they got it wrong. But what next? Lammy did eventually suspend some arms licenses, but I honestly do not know which ones have been suspended. I don't think anybody else does either. It's all shrouded in mists of obscurity. And essentially that relationship has carried on. And so if Burnham is serious about this, then Britain has got to accept the ICJ opinion and also recognise, this is the hard part for them, they continued supplying arms and weapons to Israel after the ICJ opinion came out. The ICJ opinion...
Well, that's ultimately why both Britain and America refused to accept the ICJ opinion, because it would make them all basically complicit in genocide. Of course. Now, that's not a reason to not accept it, because you should accept it because it's the fucking truth. They are committing genocide. You should stop giving them money and giving them military support and, you know, intelligence support and all the rest of it. You should stop giving them fucking diplomatic cover as well. Honestly, the fact that we have an Israeli embassy in London, given what Israel has done, like, what the fuck? Why is that allowed? Absolutely crazy shit. But they won't, because they open themselves up to prosecution, of course.
Is, in their view, acts of genocide are being committed. If you knowingly supply weapons to the perpetrator of acts of genocide, does that make you an innocent bystander, or does that make you complicit in this? Put it another way. If you and I were walking down Old Street after we've had our discussion here, and we saw some people breaking and entering a shop, and they'd run out of equipment to break in and enter, and we handed them some rocks and some bars and stuff to help them, we'd be complicit, obviously.
Yep.
Same thing.
It seems odd as well to suspend some arms licenses because Israel are committing violations of human rights, but then not to suspend all. It feels like either you're committing human rights violations or you're not. It doesn't feel like you can be doing a little bit.
You can't do sort of half a violation.
Right.
You're right.
Oh, you can have some human rights violations as a treat, you know.
Either violating them, you're not. Absolutely so. And so Britain is, I believe, complicit in this. Now, other countries have reacted differently to this. Of the European countries, Spain has gone the furthest in a big way. And
which is why, of course, Israel has decided to, like, do the Quetta invasion stuff and say, like, oh, Hamas have got Spanish fucking cells and all this shit. They've decided that Spain are like the tip of the spear that needs to be blunted. Spain are in the crosshairs of the Hasbro dirty war.
And interestingly, has gone further and further. It started with them restricting access to the ports for...
Didn't the US continue? Yes, the US did continue to have diplomatic relations even after the start of the war. Yeah. In fact, there's a fantastic book which I've read and reread a couple of times from an American... It was written just after the war by an American journalist who lived and worked in Berlin and Vienna at times as well, but mostly in Berlin during the years leading up to the Second World War, and then for the first couple of years of the war as well. Because he talks quite movingly about when the war broke out and it was declared, British citizens were given 48 hours to leave the country, or they'd be arrested and interred as enemy aliens. Right. So the British journalists, who he obviously knew, because the foreign journalist corps all hung out together and knew each other very well. They would like. He had to go around and collect like the fucking flat keys from various British journalists and like tie up the loose ends of their accommodation and shit in Berlin, because they had to just leave, like including most of their fucking belongings and stuff. They just had to get the fuck out, otherwise they knew, because the concentration camps had already started. The journalists on the ground knew that there were political prisoners being like tortured and killed and stuff, right? And they knew that if, as a British citizen, if they remained in Berlin or in Germany at large, they'd be arrested and probably killed, or at least arrested and treated very poorly. Anyway, and the point is, his diaries of his time in Berlin go on for like another 3 years, because Americans were more than welcome in Berlin during that time. In fact, the Americans did all they possibly could, except, of course, declaring war on America, to not have America join the war. But there you go.
US shipments of weapons. And that was where Progressive International were very involved in monitoring that situation and putting pressure on the Spanish government and others. But they seem to be going, I think, in absolutely the right direction on this. And they're getting attacked by Trump all the time. And I think this isn't going to end. And you look at the way Spain is constantly under criticism by Trump. But then you and I will both know that public opinion in Britain has changed dramatically on Palestine. And in the US, it's changed too. Trump does not command massive support in the USA any longer. US public opinion is moving very much in favor of the victim as opposed to in favor of the aggressor. And the main supporter of Israel's appalling behavior in Gaza and increasingly in the West Bank is Donald Trump.
That is literally true, by the way. Yeah. That's a 255. What a weird example. By the way, it's spelled WODE house, but regardless. Yeah, you asked me about P.G. Woodhouse, who lived in France during the war, didn't he? And did some broadcasts to America, I think. To say he was not punished for his activities during the war is to put it mildly, because after the war he was given a fucking... Was it an MBE or an OBE or something? Yeah, so... Not all of the. I mean, it's difficult to say he was a collaborator because he wasn't putting German propaganda out, but like, he was sort of a collaborator, I suppose, just not a full-throated one. I don't know.
Now, when Trump's no longer there, and he won't be there in 2 years' time, this is where the political process in the USA is so important, and it's young people in the USA who are going to change things. And interestingly, it is young Jewish opinion in the USA that's changed a great deal, and that is something that is, I think, highly significant.
Well, this is true. Some of the polling coming out suggesting that especially young Jewish people in America are like disgusted by this shit, because actually, and this is the misquoting of Hassan recently when he was saying, like they're saying, oh, he threatened Jewish people with violence. No, he didn't. What he did was point out that if Zionists are going to say that the criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic, what you are doing is intrinsically linking all Jewish people to Israel. And if people see nothing but genocide from Israel, and you are deliberately saying that to oppose that is to oppose all Jewish people, you are linking all Jewish people to genocide. Someone's going to act on that. Like, it's not anti-Zionists putting Jews in danger. It's Zionists, deliberately and knowingly putting Jewish people in danger. And young Jewish people can see through that shit. I said this relatively soon after October the 7th, because the reaction from Israel was absolutely fucking ridiculous. That Benjamin Netanyahu, I think people will look back on as long term one of the worst things to happen to Zionism ever. literally, because the Israel as a nation cannot survive on its own. It just can't. It doesn't produce enough of its own shit. It's not powerful enough outside of its nuclear weapons that it refuses to admit it has. It relies upon America giving it shit, both material in terms of money and weapons and things like that, but also diplomatic cover. It needs its big friend to basically ward off the enemies that it creates constantly, because it wants to, steal land and things, which it does all the time and is currently still doing. And Benjamin Netanyahu has done essentially, for people's opinion towards Israel, what Margaret Thatcher had done for the rightward shift of older generations in Britain, which we've talked about before, right? Where it used to be a conveyor belt of the older you got, the more conservative you got. That's basically stopped now, because neoliberalism stopped the financial betterment of actually working. Like, it doesn't actually pay to bother going to work anymore. You don't really get anything at the end of it. You just earn enough money to basically just pay your rent and just survive, and that's it. You don't save anything, you don't own anything. And so the financial incentive for you to be more right-wing as you get older disappears. And so that conveyor belt has stopped, and the conservative cohort of older people has gone smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's essentially what Benjamin Netanyahu has done for world opinion towards Israel. Zionism was basically untouchable 20 years ago. It was pretty much untouchable 10 years ago. It's not now. Now, AIPAC are a dirty word. Taking money from Israel is a mark of the beast, frankly, in electoral terms. And is becoming so in America too. Large numbers... Pardon me. 1 second. Large numbers of Americans, in fact a majority, have a negative view. I think it's something like 55% of Americans have a negative view of Israel, which is up from like 30% 5 years ago. Even amongst Republicans, it's like 40%, I believe. And amongst Democrats, basically, you have to... Sorry, apologies that I should have muted myself and all that. Apologies. Yeah, but amongst Democrats now, it's sort of a... You're putting a hex on yourself to be pro-Israel. And frankly, I don't mind the Democrats losing some elections to get rid of those Zionist freaks. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. If it means next time round you get anti-Zionists put in there that everyone can vote for, cool. If you're taking money from Israel, you are pro-genocide and no one should ever vote for you. Very simple. Apologies, everybody. Apologies. Yeah. Oh. Oh, she's gone live. She still hasn't gone back to me. I wanted to see if she wanted to learn to watch this with me, but she's not fucking contacted me at all. So I don't know what the fuck's up with that. Whatever. Oh, apologies. Ooh. Hang on a minute.
Significant politically in the USA. Democrat candidates supported by AIPAC are not waltzing into office.
Yeah, in fact, we had the Senate race last week. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want to get back to the tribunal in a moment, but you just said something really interesting, so I want to explore that. We're talking about Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, who has also said to Donald Trump, no US military on Spanish soil. Yet we know that we're also complicit in the war in Iran at the moment. That's Netanyahu and Trump's war. I don't mean it to be a trite question, because obviously it's got a lot of answers, but why does it seem that our government is incapable of standing up to a US president?
Interesting. It's in the...
Where does Israel get its money from? America. Yeah. That's where it gets its money from. The United States of America. Like, and the United States doesn't, like, do anything but just increase its debt. It doesn't tax its rich. It spends far too much on its own military-industrial complex. It can't afford yet another 200 squillion for Israel. But it does. It just gives it them. And they essentially owe it to China more broadly. That's it. Yep. Thank you, Idiosyncrasy, for resubscribing with Prime. Much love. Oh, and thank you to Layla with the cheese tithe from earlier, which interrupted the thing. But that's fine. Yeah, I forgive you.
Psychology of the Ministry of Defence and the Foreign Office and all international thinking in the British, for want of a better word, establishment, a pro-US Atlanticist position. BBC News reports are essentially Atlanticist in their analysis. Likewise, most of the other media, even more so than most of the rest of Western Europe. And there's this assumption that we will always be close to the US in whatever it does. And so when the US comes along with something utterly absurd and bizarre, like the bombing of Iran, well,
I don't think the Jews wanted to move to the Falklands 255. And also, that's just somebody else's territory as well. So, like, yeah. I know the point you're making about looking for an alternative, and there were alternatives sought. But ultimately, so many European Jewish refugees had gone to Palestine that kind of the World Zionist Congress decided Palestine was the place it was going to do its thing. So, there we go.
For what? Why are they bombing Iran? They can't actually give a rational reason why they're bombing Iran.
Because the war is meant to be never-ending. It's not meant to be won. It doesn't matter if you're fighting Asia or Eurasia. Sorry, East Asia or Eurasia. The war is meant to be never-ending. What about the Isle of Man? 255, you're slightly missing the point. The Jewish people didn't want any piece of land in the Isle of Man or the Falklands or anything. It's not. You're getting hung up on the geography of it, which is a bit. You're missing the point, I think. Oh, my second. Oh. Western countries nerfed in Civilization 7 by monthly need to send 50 billion... What? That's a Civilization meme. Okay, cool. I still haven't played Civ 7 yet. Is it any good? It's a good meme.
At one stage, they said to get rid of Iran's nuclear weapons when they knew full well Iran didn't have any nuclear weapons and doesn't have any nuclear weapons and probably will never have any nuclear weapons. So they then said they had to bomb Iran, and the British government said, we are not involved in this. Yet, at the same time, allowed the US forces to use British bases. And then, more specifically, Trump comes on to Andy Burnham the day after he's been appointed Prime Minister and says, can we use RAF?
You haven't played Civ 5. Civ 5 is the best. Civ 5 is the best. You have to play Civ 5. Fucking brilliant game. I still go back to it every now and then.
Bases for US planes to take off and bomb Iran. But don't worry, it's only defensive. Well, if, again, put the example of ourselves, if you're on my office or house is bombed, we're going to be pretty upset about it. But if somebody says, well, don't worry, it was a defensive bombing, does that make it all right? So your family have been killed by...
Jeremy, just say you watch the Kevin Logan stream. You're a regular viewer of KF Logan 1875 on twitch.tv. and because you're making the same arguments that I did, so you must be getting them from me.
By defensive bombardment, utter absurdity and nonsense. What was Burnham doing agreeing to that?
Yeah.
And that is where we get dragged into the war in Iran. So as far as people in Iran are concerned, they don't particularly care whether it's called defensive or aggressive bombing. As far as they're concerned, a school is...
No, you don't have to interact with anyone on Civ. Civ, you can just play on your own, single player against the computer, basically, yeah.
It's been bombed by planes that took off from Britain.
And you've got a long history in politics, particularly as an MP. I can't remember what year you were elected.
83.
83. Not to make you feel like...
That's before I was born, man. You're so crusty, man. Jam Man, retire for the love of God.
That's a year after I was born. So you've
I'm glad you were born by then.
Okay. You've got this long history in politics, and it's often said a history of being on the right side of the argument, particularly on geopolitics. And in times where your position hasn't always been the popular position, you've stood with integrity and principle and made those arguments, particularly on Palestine, but I think there's a whole range of other oppressions we can talk about. The question I'm trying to get at is it feels like two things are happening. One, it feels like the media in some ways is getting more vicious, and in some ways is even narrowing the scope of what is acceptable or unacceptable conversation. But also, as you pointed out, polling in the United States, for instance, shows that increasingly young Jewish Americans don't support Donald Trump. And I think that's also reflected in the UK amongst young people. Do you think things are changing for better or for worse?
For the better. I think the media are vicious, absolutely, but they're vicious and they're shallow.
Yeah.
They're vicious because they're nasty and because they are not prepared to engage with the argument that we're putting. And they're shallow because people have got other sources of information. Now, you and I both have and use social media. I often get extremely annoyed by stuff on social media. Who doesn't? But it is a form of communication that is open to anybody.
Yep.
Thinking of my life, growing up opposing the Vietnam War, we had no source of information other than the BBC or newspapers or occasionally some international radio stations that were quite hard to get. If you had, well, you wouldn't even know what it is. I expect a shortwave radio. Shortwave radio?
Vague recognition.
Seen it in a museum, yeah. And so we had no other source of information. So news about...
Okay, see, you don't need to do this old man bit. We get it. You're fucking old, mate, yeah. Tell us about playing with a stick and hoop. Tell us about the first time you saw the moving pictures. Whoa!
About Vietnam leaked out. Jane Fonda's visit to Hanoi leaked out and things like this. So we got our information that way. We continued opposing the Vietnam War and got a lot of abuse for it. Now you have a plethora of media. They know that people have got alternative sources. They know they can know in real time everything that's happening. And this is what is so unbelievably disgusting about what's happening in Gaza. We could turn on television, make a WhatsApp call to somebody in Gaza, and you'd get a picture of a child suffering. You could get a picture of an operation undertaken with no anesthetic, a child dying of dehydration and starvation. And yet within 5-10 kilometers of where that child is, there's all the water, all the medicines, all the electricity and everything possibly. This is a specific human-orientated destruction of life in Gaza. It is unbelievably disgusting. And for those politicians in Westminster that continue to support Israel's policy in Gaza, I simply say, in 100 years' time, researchers, historical researchers are going to be saying, what were you lot doing when you knew this was happening and you gave the wherewithal to do it?
And there's also the interest...
Well, this is the thing. No one's ever been on the right side of a genocide. No one doing a genocide was ever looked upon favourably. But the thing is, evil people, A, don't care, and B, don't always necessarily see themselves as doing the evil thing. I think there are a lot of Zionists who fully comprehend that what they're doing is like bad, but they see the greater goal as, you know, the greater Israel project, and that's more important because that's ethnic supremacism, I suppose. But yeah, they will be viewed unbelievably negatively, just like every other genocide ever was. Yeah. But what was I going to say? Yeah, the liberal thing to do is, of course, condemn every past genocide whilst sitting on the fence about any current ongoing genocides. And then say, oh no, I was against that genocide, but this current one is, it's complicated. Rinse and repeat forever.
Interesting dynamic now with Wes Streeting, the now Defence Secretary. We know from his exchanges with Peter Mandelson that he recognises that what's happening in Palestine and in Gaza in particular is war crimes. Yeah, I suppose that puts him in an interesting predicament as a minister. Like,
well, it must do, because if he recognised in this rather strange WhatsApp information with Peter Mandelson, I find it all a bit odd, actually. But there we are. Okay, they've got the information. He is now Secretary of State for Defence. If he authorises, as he must have done, the use of RAF bases for the bombing of Iran, it's also a war crime to bomb civilian targets in Iran. That is a war crime in anybody's book. And that's exactly what's happening now by the US. So is he going to find it in himself to do the right thing, or is he going to do what every defence secretary has done and bow down before what they call the inevitable, which is the power of NATO and the power of the US opinion? I suspect it's going to be the latter.
I was going to say, sadly, I think we know the answer to that. But that's why the tribunal's important. So let's come back to that.
Yeah.
I was really interested, you said that there was one in Vietnam during the war.
Yeah.
How public was that tribunal?
Oh, it was very public in the end. It was Bertrand Russell established it, Russell Tribunal. And the idea was...
Oh, nice, Bertie. He was kind of based in his own way. Well, I'm sure someone will now bring up a quote of his where he said something very unbased. I don't know.
Was that you would bring together opinion in the US and Europe about the illegality of the Vietnam War, the brutality of it, the use of chemical weapons, the use of biological weapons, and the torture of the Vietnamese people by the US forces, and the incredible levels of bombardment that went on over the bombing of North Vietnam, which actually had greater bombing on North Vietnam than the whole of the Second World War. Gosh. The destruction of life was absolutely massive. And so what the Russell Tribunal did, it was condemned at the time by all the leading politicians and media as being sort of pro-communist, pro-Vietnam thing.
What are my thoughts on Ellie Jones? She's a bit briefcase, but she's not the worst briefcase, if that makes sense. Like she's on the acceptable end of briefcasery. If that makes sense. That's not very detailed political analysis, but like, I'm not a massive fan, but she's she's a great MP, so she is certainly better than virtually everyone else in the room.
And so on. But in reality, it stood the test of time because people were able to speak out, and that's what.
Let's not have talk of Zuckerberg in chat, please, because that story annoyed me today. I said this the other day, but like, if you can just endanger children and pay a fine, it's not even really criminal. Then, like, it's basically saying, yeah, endanger children all you like. There's a price for it, but you can just pay that price. If the punishment is a fine, then rich people can just do it. It's fucking gross.
Why we did this tribunal is giving people a chance to speak out. But I'm reintroducing my bill for a public inquiry on September the 11th. And so it's there again. May or may not get debated.
Oh, typical Muslamic using September the 11th for his anti-Semitic propaganda. Yeah, I see. So Hitler-coded.
Know what's going to happen in Parliament that day. But I'm keeping on with it because we're going to get there. And one day there will be one. And one day I want to see those ministers and others, David Lammy, Keir Starmer and others, brought before a commission that has the power to bring them there. Say, what decisions did you make on the weapons? Why did you make the decisions? And why did Keir Starmer, even in opposition, say that Israel's denial of water and food to people in Gaza was a legitimate act of self-defense?
She does have that right, yes. No, she does. She.
There is no part of international law where that is an act of self-defense. It is a war crime in anybody's...
Which he absolutely knows as a human rights lawyer. It's just he's also Israel's little bitch.
book in any circumstances.
Well, and on that point, by the way, and not to sympathise with the police officer in question here, but to take you back briefly to the story of Maccabi Tel Aviv fans being banned from entering Britain to attend a football match from like last year. The police officer, who was the head of West Midlands Police, who made that call, or was one of the people that made that call, stood down in order to basically like take the heat off himself, because the Zionist freaks in Parliament were like going after him. They're still going after him. There's going to be an inquiry into his activities around this, so they're still like harassing him. And the point is, as with the Jason Arde thing, it's not just to punish the individual for the perceived crime of either being a black person in academia or a person in authority opposing Israel in any way whatsoever. It's to send a signal to other people not to oppose the Zionists in any way, because if you do, there will be ramifications. It's about marking the card of any person who would stand up to Israel in any way. It's fucking pathetic.
I think there was an excuse at some point that he misspoke, but I think Emily Thornberry that same evening or the next day doubled down on exactly what Keir Starmer had said. So yeah. I don't think it's conceivable that it was a mistake.
There was no mistake. He made it very, very clear that was his opinion. And he kept then telling us he was a human rights lawyer.
And something that we've both done often, you for decades more than I have, is been on Palestine solidarity
it's
campaign
only because
marches.
You're younger.
There we go. I'll take that. I think there's a few things I'd want to say, and I'm interested.
Hang on, is Jeremy Corbyn really old? Is that a thing? Surely not.
In your reflection, the first is this ridiculous idea that hate marches, where it's actually, whenever I've gone, they're incredibly peaceful. As a Jewish man, I know the Jewish bloc is often huge, but also the sense that actually those haven't been diminishing. They've actually been growing. More and more people are seeing the need to march and speak out for people who are being oppressed.
It's absurd to call it a march of hate, and Priti Patel should know better than that, and so should it's just mad. I've been on all of them, and I have seen thousands and thousands.
But as with all of these people who take money from Israel, the old adage is true. Don't expect a person to understand whose paycheck relies on them being ignorant.
The people there, and the very large Jewish bloc of people on the march is wholly disproportionate to the size of the Jewish community in Britain. So the most likely person to be there is a Jewish person in support of Palestine.
He was born in 1889. That is a lovely joke. You either get that joke or you don't. I'm not going to explain it. It's very good. Excellent.
Commensurate with the size of that community. And the idea of the March of Hate is just so crazy. On the big one, I don't know if you were on that one, the one that went to the US Embassy, very big one. It was not that far off a million there. As we were doing the last stretch towards the embassy, 3 or 4 people standing outside an office block, holding up an Israeli flag and saying that we're all bad and wrong and so on and so on. Nothing happened to them at all. Nobody abused them, nobody attacked them, nobody interfered with them, just ignored them and walked on by. Well, if it was meant to be a sort of foaming at the mouth march of hate where we're going to go around marauding around the streets, you'd have thought something would have happened to them, wouldn't you? Now, maybe they were there for a provocation. I don't know.
Wasn't he born in 1488? I see what you've done there, but like... The joke is that Hitler was born in 1889. So. The joke is that he's Adolf Hitler. It's a very good joke. Solid work. I'm absolutely furious that I didn't come up with it myself.
No, nothing happened. That's an example of how organised it is and how we will not tolerate any form of racism whatsoever on our marches. And indeed, we don't. Anybody starts up with that kind of nonsense, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, whatever, they're off. We're just not putting up with it.
And I want to talk about the media, particularly because you mentioned that an aspect of a tribunal. It just seems so utterly perverse that a march that is a march of peace about stopping the genocide of people gets called a hate march, but the actual violence that's happening in Palestine, the West Bank, and in the illegal
Well,
settlements.
it's a great distraction, isn't it? So Home Secretary called something a march of hate. That's what's going to get the headline, not the fact that it was the very opposite, because you don't get much of a headline by saying, no trouble on a march.
Yeah.
That's not exactly news.
I suppose that leads us to a point in the conversation where I could sit almost with anyone opposite me and tell them they have no idea what it's like to have a daily onslaught of media attacks that are unfair, disproportionate, where they take what you say out of context or you're misquoted. I suspect I might be sat with someone who understands what that's like.
I think I sent you a message saying join the club, didn't I?
It was very lovely.
Literally. He's literally the guy with the noose around his neck. First time. Oh, that's so cute that they've got like a little WhatsApp thing. Oh, honestly, I ship them. Older man, younger gay Twinkie boy. It's, you know what? I can see it. There's a sugar daddy situation here, and by sugar I mean mostly like strawberry based sweetness, but you know.
I've had it for years, but it's rough on the individual, of course, and you know that as well as I do, and it is rough. But it's actually worse for immediate friends, family, and community.
Sure.
And so my house under siege for years by media, to the extent that my wife can't go out, nobody can visit, nobody can come. And you realise that you're actually in prison under siege by the British media, who have no interest in reporting.
It's true. Literally, like, I had no interest in knowing what Jeremy Corbyn's house looks like, and yet I fucking know exactly what it looks like. Like, it's not relevant to anything, and yet they doorstepped him so much, trying to get any little fucking tittle-tattle piece of nonsense on him, that I have a fucking a picture-perfect image in my head of exactly what his fucking house looks like.
I think, or what I say, no interest in reporting what you think or what you have to say, only in making you into a hate figure. But you know what? After a while, you become very interesting, because people say, hang on, why do they all hate you? Well, I say, I don't know, do you? And so after a while, people sort of say, well, actually, let's look past that. And I'm forever grateful
To be fair, they probably hate you because you invaded Poland, but, you know.
The electorate of Islington North, that after all that stuff that's been thrown out about me for years, and the Labour Party expelling me from membership, they still elected me as an independent. That says something about...
Yeah, that was fucking dope, by the way. That was the greatest thing of the 2024 election, was John Billy Cromlin's getting back in. Because it boiled the piss of all the people whose piss deserves to be boiled. It was delightful.
People's ability to look past what the populist mainstream media say and do.
I suspect of some of the attacks that were aimed at you at 2017 and 2019, which I believed at the time, by the way, and have apologised to you privately, but I'm happy to repeat that.
I know you did, yeah.
I don't think they work in the same way now, but I don't know how you feel about that.
No, they don't work in the same way because it's sort of been done before.
Exactly. It's the boy who cried anti-Semitism. You do it so much that people stop listening. Which is actually dangerous, because actual anti-Semitism is that much harder to call out, because people just lump it all in with, oh, well, everyone just gets accused of that, so it means nothing. Thanks, Zionists, you made Jews more fucking vulnerable. Well done, you pricks.
And the idea that you keep on throwing this accusation at people, it just becomes absurd. And the government doesn't realise how absurd it looks at the moment with the ban on Palestine action.
Yeah.
They're worried about prison overcrowding, so am I. Yet they propose to put, 3,000?
Yeah, something like that.
3,000 people in prison for the great crime of holding up a placard, which apparently makes them into being a terrorist. So our prisons are going to be populated by 80-plus-year-old retired clergy people from the Church of England for the great crime of holding up a placard.
It's
You couldn't
utterly
make
absurd.
this. You couldn't make this stuff up.
And I know it's a different conversation, but nevertheless, I know you'll share the sentiment. The amount of women we're putting in prison for
Yeah.
non-violent crimes, and so then you have this overcrowded prison population where you're letting.
Oh yeah, no, I did mention that the US had prescribed Palestine action. So now it's it's illegal to say, "Yeehaw! I support Palestine action." Yeehaw! It's illegal to say that, so you shouldn't say that, Americans. Okay. That's just look, a PSA for all of y'all. You say? So,
Out the people who are genuinely
see, I speak the lingo. You know.
dangerous early, and you say you have some sort of crisis.
Wouldn't it
that's
be
quite
good
obvious.
if instead of this we had a conversation about our prison system?
Right.
There are
You can't say, "Hey, I'm supporting Palestine action over here." You can't say that. That would be illegal. So don't say that, please. Okay, you'll get arrested. You go to prison for 1,000,000 years, and
are people who are in prison and should be in prison who are a danger to everybody else. There are other people in prison who are not a danger to anybody else, and maybe should be something else to them. But shouldn't the object of a prison system be about education, rehabilitation, bringing the people out in a better state? But what do we have instead? One of the highest rates of reoffending in Europe, and amongst youth offenders, the reoffending rate is well over 60%. And so we're not doing it right. We need a real think about prison systems and how we deal with it. Yes, there are people who've done appalling things, crimes of rape, brutality, murder, and so on. We know that. They do need to be taken out of circulation. But people holding up placards, I don't quite see where the threat comes from.
And so when you were
well, you say that, but surely it's illegal to support terrorist organisations, isn't it? I know they take the First Amendment really seriously, but you can't for instance, would it be legal in America to say, "I support Al Qaeda"? Again, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, would it be legal for an American to say that? Do they take the First Amendment that fucking far? Because that seems a bit wacky, in all honesty. But I don't know if there are any American legal bods in chat. Maybe there are.
we're looking into the tribunal, and there was a section on media. What was the evidence that you heard?
What we heard was the way in which the media are very unkeen on reporting the real truth about it. So we heard from Matt Cannard of Palestine Deep Dive, who've done a great deal of work into investigating the supply of arms and the story that's there, and the failure of the media to properly explain what's going on at RAF Akrotiri.
You can say it. Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
In Cyprus. The base is
which I've been talking about for fucking years now. Yeah. Britain using its base. It's illegally owned fucking, a vestige of colonialism when we used to run all of Cyprus. And now we've just got like a couple of RAF bases which we use to engage in genocide. Cool. Awesome. Fucking brilliant. I'm so glad I pay taxes to this government.
Used by Britain and, we understand, by Israel. People in Cyprus are monitoring it every day. Are the British media interested in this? No. Starmer went there and then came out of the base to do a press conference and made a sort of rather bizarre statement. There are things going on in there that I can't tell you about. That's why I've come here. Why say that?
Makes absolutely no sense.
I can only believe that he'd been told that these surveillance flights were really actually passing on security information to Israel, which they constantly denied. What came out of our tribunal was the family of an aid worker who was killed in Gaza City are trying to get justice for the death of their loved one, understandably. The lawyers contacted the RAF and said they gave the time, the date, the place, etc. can we have your drone or overflying footage of what was going on in Gaza City at that time, which will help our defense, which is to prove that the Israeli Defense Forces specifically targeted this individual? They said, absolutely no, we're not releasing it. And this is after myself and other MPs have been told in Parliament that the whole purpose of the overflying was humanitarian, to locate the hostages and help them be released. Well, surely if it's humanitarian, then you'd want to know who murdered an aid worker, wouldn't you?
Sure. There's definitely an incoherency to it. And I think it speaks to a wider point too that I don't think people always know, that journalists, independent journalists, aren't actually allowed to report.
Hundreds of journalists have been...
But by the way, when they say it's for humanitarian efforts, it means the only people they see in this conflict as humans are Israel. So that's why the flights are specifically aimed at helping Israel, because they are the humans, according to the British government.
Killed in Gaza, probably 400, maybe more. The mainstream media often don't have it.
Oh yeah, Enki, that's a very good point. Yeah, the British government is absolutely cocked. Israel has purposely targeted and murdered British citizens, and the British government are fine with it. Same with America. Same with a lot of Western countries. Yeah.
In Gaza. In some cases, they're prevented from getting people into Gaza unless they're embedded with Israeli forces. And embedded journalism is a very, very dangerous practice for obvious reasons of independence. But the big channels, the global ones, also, I think, try and evade their own responsibility. If you are a world news gathering organization and you want to report on a conflict and you send your journalists in to report it, you're obviously putting them at risk. They know that, you know that.
Especially given Israel purposely targets all journalists, yeah.
But what they do is try and evade their responsibility by using stringer journalists. So the number of Palestinian journalists who have been killed is far greater than the number of journalists from outside. Citizen journalists and others who have no recourse to anybody, they just get killed. And I think we need to stand up for them as well. The channel that's got the most journalists in Gaza and in the West Bank is Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera have had a disproportionately large number of their journalists killed, not just in Gaza and the West Bank, but also in Iran, previously in Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. Al Jazeera journalists are often targeted by US forces. And that is really, really dangerous.
Can I ask you about the use of, particularly in the BBC, or frankly any media organisation, ceasefire? There's often talk about a ceasefire, but then a sentence later they'll talk about another bomb that's just been dropped. And it feels like words are truly being distorted out of all proportion.
There's been no ceasefire.
Right.
The claim by Trump that there's going... And Trump seems a very strange way of conducting foreign policy, because he seems to make a decision that foreign policy is what he thinks it is and what he thinks it should be, rather than what the reality is. So he announces there's a ceasefire, and he announces there's a board of peace. Two things. One is there is no ceasefire, and secondly, that board is nothing to do with peace. That board is absolutely everything to do with carving up Gaza to make it ready for his mates and his investors and corporations to go in. I mean, I'm sure you know this figure, but I suspect many people that have been watching this podcast wouldn't. Gaza is a very small area. It's very tight. I've been there many times. It's a very small place. It is now 70% occupied by Israeli forces where there are no Palestinians. So in other words, the Palestinian population that used to occupy the 2 million who occupied 100% of Gaza now occupy 30% of Gaza.
So again, the Zionists overstretching themselves. They were doing very well, keeping the West on side while just carving off little bits of land. A little Golan Heights here, a little land grab in the West Bank, a little bit here, a little bit there. You know? Not so much that people began to really notice. Whereas now they've gone fucking hell for leather, thinking, oh, we can just take it all. We can take whatever we want. Ha 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 ha. And people have woken up to the game. It's the old adage of, what is it? You can fleece a sheep as many times as you like, but you can only skin it once. And they skinned the sheep. And now it's dead.
Lost their homes, lost their land, lost their livelihood. The only way they can survive is on the rational delivery of some items of food and supply sometimes of very polluted water to them. And that is a whole population being destroyed. And I fear for the future of the Palestinian people. And I just remember, I've been, as I said, quite a few times in Palestine. When I was observing the presidential election in Palestine, 2005, I think it was. At the end of the day, which had been disrupted quite a lot by Israel firing on polling stations and all sorts of things, but it sort of took place. I spent the evening with the Palestine Mental Health Group, Dr. Muna Farah, who's a good friend of mine. And this was a long time ago, 20 years ago. And I said, Muna, what is the mental health situation in Gaza? And she said, I think 60% of the population are suffering from functional mental health conditions. That was then, when there wasn't carpet bombing, there was semi-functioning minimal economy, and now there is 63 million tons of rubble for 2 million people. Do the maths. 31.5 tons of rubble for every citizen in Gaza.
Jesus Christ. And the world just let it happen. Well, actively supported him.
As a result,
disgusting.
The bombardment. And again, more bombs. The more bombs dropped on Iraq. It's unthinkable. Yet, Palestinian people are still there, still determined to survive.
There's a young man on Instagram in Gaza that I often see come up on my reel who goes out for a run every morning, and he often talks about the devastating environment that he's living in, but also that he's never going to let go of hope and resilience.
It's illegal to go whaling in Nebraska. Isn't Nebraska landlocked? What? Okay, I guess. Probably quite an easy law to live by then in Nebraska. Anyway, it's great thoughts like that you should reward me for, in the form of bits and subs and memberships and super chats and all of that jazz, which can help to support my balls, whatever. Anyway, Spain is the only European country I think that has openly condemned the Gaza actions in Gaza. To be fair, I think Ireland have done quite well, and Norway. I also saw that the Dutch broadcaster has pulled out of Eurovision this year. So literally another institution of, I don't know, the Western world, which is happy to see itself absolutely destroyed, as long as Israel don't get inconvenienced in any way whatsoever. Amazing.
Resilience, and he's going to keep working out every day and keep running. And just
honestly, by the end of it, it's just going to be Israel and like Moldova in the Eurovision Song Contest, and probably Australia, because why not? They only just got in; they're not going to leave, are they?
There's a story of resilience. It's absolutely phenomenal.
There's so many like that. There is Abdirahman's story here. He was in Gaza, young guy, footballer, wants to study journalism, suffered a great deal, family suffered a great deal. He's in Ireland now, where he's acting as a sports journalist and writing a great deal and does a lot of stuff on social media. And he came and gave us evidence. And then, he won't mind me saying this, after that evening, after he'd given his evidence, I said, thank you very much. I took him out for a meal. He couldn't eat anything because his stomach has been so damaged. And this is a young footballer, young fit guy. And that's just one person. And he had this sort of feeling, as do many Palestinians, almost of guilt. I'm out. I'm able to go to a meeting, go and take a coffee, whatever, just do normal stuff. And the family can't.
Well, survivor guilt is a well understood psychological phenomena. people who undergo, and it can happen in a number of really weird instances, people who survive like a plane crash, but other people don't. Because the obvious question is, well, why did I survive? Why didn't they, you know? And I think probably the most tragic example I can think of would be Primo Levi, who was an Italian Jewish chemist who was unfortunately given the place and time he lived. He was wrapped up in the Holocaust and went into the camp system, and thankfully survived. And came out and went on to write lots of genuinely brilliant writing, some fantastic poetry and stuff about his experiences. But eventually survivor guilt got the better of him. He was something he struggled with all the rest of his life, and he lived a good 20 years after the war. And eventually, unfortunately, took his own life because he just couldn't handle it anymore. A real sad loss for humanity. But I think there are a lot of people who go through that. And I'm sure there are lots of people, who, like you say, Palestinians who've been able to get out of Palestine and survive, who probably do feel that way. Well, anyway.
And when one day this is all over, and you get the sort of one person surviving and the whole family dead, that sort of survivor's guilt, it's going to be there. Why me?
No pre-watch, I promise.
Why did I survive? Why did my auntie, my uncle, my brothers, my cousins and all that get killed? It's just... we're watching all this. That's what makes me so angry. That's why we did this book.
It's interesting because you said you fear for the future, which I totally understand, but you also are often determined with hope of what a better vision looks like, both on this, but frankly on nuclear weapons, on geopolitics more widely. I get my hope from, I think, that even though the media organizations have refused to report this properly for years and years, more and more people are finding out about it, more and more people are disgusted, and more people are turning to Andy Burnham now and saying, you know, you can cut vape shops, you can stop bookie shops, that's great, but you're still participating in a genocide in Gaza. I
get hope from the way in which people are so resilient and will come out. When we did the first Palestine march in autumn 23...
I get hope from the changing public opinion, because that's the thing that will ultimately end this, is when it becomes impossible for politicians to continue to support this evil. At that point, it becomes conceivable to see an end of it.
I was the only MP on it, and I went there, obviously, and I spoke at the rally at the end of it and thanked everyone for coming. And what I thanked them for doing was standing up to the media barrage, which said they shouldn't be there, the media barrage that called them all people filled with hate. I thanked them all for coming. And so it is about supporting people who are under attack and speaking up for all of us, and that is what is happening. Look at it globally. We live in this sort of Western media bubble, whereas around the world, the size of Palestine demonstrations was absolutely enormous throughout 24, 25, and obviously...
Yeah, the one I went to in London was fucking massive. Like, you couldn't see the end of it. It was ridiculous.
Still now. Look at them in Malaysia, look at them in South Africa, look at them across Latin America and so on. It's in Europe that there seems to be this problem of conception by European governments about it. But again, things are changing. We're doing events for this book, and we're doing them all over. We're doing them all over Europe. And so that's helping, because it means that we give people...
What book is he talking about? Real hope is here. No, that's Zach's book. No. The Crumblins book. Cool Tribune book, I guess. Yeah. Comrade Corbyn. Corbyn book Gaza, maybe? Oh, it's the idea of the Gaza Tribunal, Britain's complicity in genocide. I have to take a look at that. That's actually one I don't mind buying. Usually when it's some arsehole writing a book like J.O.B., I'm like, oh, right, okay, can someone get me an illegal copy of that, please? Yeah.
That space to organise and debate. But there are pressures on people. Pressures not to show any symbolism for Palestine. Why not? Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't people wear a Palestine badge if that's what they want to? Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also the proportion.
But Greta Thunberg had an octopus in one picture. That means she hates all Jewish people.
Of, you know, Tommy Robinson had his Unite the Kingdom march. There were a lot of people at it. It's definitely worrying. But compared to the marches like the Together Alliance, for instance, which wasn't just about Palestine, but a more wide progressive movement, but it feels like didn't receive nearly as much coverage as sometimes these very divisive movements.
Haven't the Palestine marches, though, become a cipher for something else as well? Because they are obviously very big, and the people have come there out of a conscious, rational thought process and discussion. They want to do something to support Palestine because they're under attack and under occupation. They've come there for a positive reason of supporting somebody. And that makes them begin to question a whole lot of other things on the world as a whole. The fact that we now have a Burnham's government and Starmer's government before are proposing to increase defence spending to 3% of GDP, going up ultimately to 5%. And it's the only area of government spending that...
I'm really proud of you, Kieran. Well done.
...that's going up. Every single other department is being cut in some way.
We're already the 5th biggest spender on defence, I think, or military in the world.
Absolutely. And every other area, think about it. Schools.
And they want to spend way, way more. And apparently we're broke when it comes to spending anything on anything else whatsoever. Who is this starter bloke you mentioned? I don't know. Keith? Ken? Was it Ken something? I don't know. I don't know who he was. And it's one of those things, it's lost in the history. It's just the mists of time now. We'll never know who he was.
Underfunded. Schools losing teaching assistants. Just think of teaching a mixed ability class of 30 secondary school students. 1 or 2 have got behaviour difficulties. 1 or 2 might have special needs of a different sort. Others need a bit more help. Others are doing very well and don't need much help. Somehow or other, as a teacher, you've got to navigate that breadth of ability. And they do. But you do it by having a system where there's support, where you've got teaching assistants, where you've got special needs, etc., in any properly funded school. What do you find? So many schools these days, who's going? The teaching assistants, the special needs, and the SENCOs, the coordinators of special needs. And every child suffers as a result of that. The whole education system suffers. Now, why is that happening? Because government priority is putting into weapons and a new generation of nuclear weapons rather than what is absolutely a priority to me is housing, is social justice, and is education.
And it felt the Together Alliance did a really good job of connecting the struggles and connecting the causes.
Apparently this starter guy was a gooner. Meep meep. But then again, so's Corbyn, so...
Ultimately saying that socialism, yes, is about inequality, but also it's part of the anti-war movement. It's part of the movement against the climate crisis. Why do you think those things have been able to be siloed in the past? I mean, I guess they were connected in the past too. It kind of goes in waves, right?
It's very easy for simplistic, quite right-wing media to condemn anybody who wants to spend less on defence and a greater effort into bringing about peace in the world as being sort of defeatists, are not prepared to stand up to the enemy, are not prepared to rationally look at things. Look, I hate the war in Ukraine. I hate the war in Sudan. I hate the war in Congo. I hate what's happening to the Palestinian people and the bombing of Iran and so on. I've asked this question in Parliament. You've cut overseas aid. You're underfunding United Nations. You're underfunding OSCE and other organizations. Where is the effort for some kind of diplomatic way forward on any of these conflicts? Leave Palestine one side for a moment. Where's the effort being put into that? Answer, there is none. And
see, typical Hitler. Typical Hitler wanting to have a negotiated peace to war. You know, that thing that Hitler loved doing was stopping wars. You know.
And then you ask yourself another question. This is the harder part. The amount of money going on weapons around the world is this year going to reach around $3 trillion.
Rookie numbers. We can do way more than that. Why are we spending any amount of money on anything else but weapons? Have you considered that us spending money on like schools and hospitals doesn't help any way to increase the profit margins of Raytheon? You just fucking think about that.
3 trillion, it's a lot of dollars.
That is a lot of dollars, to be fair. Good night, Lady Spellwind. Much love to you. Is his new book about his struggle? Kind of.
A third of that is by the USA. Every major industrial and military country around the world is raising arms expenditure. Britain, all across Europe, USA, India, Russia, China. Underfunding of the UN, underfunding of overseas aid, underfunding of development. And then you have ethno-nationalistic right blaming the refugees for being refugees. Victims of war, environmental disaster, human rights abuse, lots of things. And so we then end up with a sort of accelerator calculator which takes us into spending more and more on weapons, when actually we should be looking at the issues of social injustice around the world.
Whoa. What's with the anti-Semitism? What's this about? Jesus Christ. All right, Adolf.
What's the biggest threat facing the planet? Environmental disaster, obviously. Loss of biodiversity, loss of forests, multiple soil erosion.
Woke.
And in urban areas, the appalling levels of air quality in so many cities around the world. I mean,
Gay.
London is bad, but it's nothing compared to Delhi and other big cities. And so what's happened to the whole agenda for peace, for regeneration, for environmental sustainability, all being destroyed on the altar of building for war?
And we're speaking on a day when there's yet another heat wave. The government have just had a COBRA meeting about the climate crisis, and their output was to ban disposable barbecues. It just feels like
that's oh god. This is how you know. This is how you know Burnham is basically Starmer 2.0, because that's such a Starmer thing to do. Because not only did he not ban the fucking the little barbecue trays, he asked companies to stop selling them. Didn't even impose a ban. Just went to companies, can you not sell those, please? To which many of them went, fuck off. That was it. You had a fucking COBRA meeting for that. Oh, well, thanks, Andy. No, you've turned the country round, mate. Oh, it's only sunlight and fucking rainbows from here on out.
there's a real lack of seeing some of these issues as urgent.
I'm not really convinced that barbecues make a big difference one way or the other. I think people should be careful about fires for obvious reasons, but come on.
Well, it just feels if you're still going to drill for North Sea oil and gas, that's probably
that's
the
right.
problem.
Let's get drilling instead. Yeah. And so the real issues are the
but the drilling happens offshore, so you can't even set fire to like Gloucestershire, can it? Checkmate, leftists. You've been destroyed.
continuation of a fossil fuel based economy and the growing number of carbon and other emissions.
True, to be fair, he cut out the middleman. He didn't have a quango to try and ask them nicely not to ban things, you know. Yeah, so in that respect, he's more efficient at briefcasery. I did see that. Dale Vince is such a bitch. He's such a Labour shill bitch.
Which both contribute to global warming, but also those that contribute very heavily to the destruction of the natural world and biodiversity. But let's be optimistic. Can we?
Absolutely. Let's always.
Are you going to be happy to be optimistic?
Yes,
please.
please.
I'm relieved. There's some things make me happy.
Good.
Do you believe that?
Other than your allotment and jam.
Well, I've already made quite a lot of jam this year, but the fruit's a bit small because it's been so dry. But there we go. Never mind. It tastes all right. No, when I hear that the sea eagles are doing well, when I see that beavers are coming back, when I see that red kites are flying, when I see there's more bees, when there's more butterflies around the place, that shows that there are some people around who are genuine about rebuilding our biodiversity.
Yes.
And when you look at...
This is so woke. Honestly, the only patriotic thing to do is kill all of the animals. All of them. Okay? Honestly, you know who also liked animals? Hitler. Except that time he killed his dog. Let's not talk about it.
The numbers of forests that are being planted around the world. And the best news is what's happened in some parts of India and South Asia, as that is the regeneration of the mangrove swamps. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Because they are the best protection against rising sea levels and the dangers from a tsunami. Now, these are all individual small things, but there's something about people and their love of natural world and environment and nature that they are prepared to contribute to those kind of things. So we do...
I am giggling at Corbyn's beaver. That hit the funny bone.
Need that.
Well, ironically, why is it called the funny bone? It's fucking awful when you hit it. Anyway.
Push for a much bigger rethink on agriculture. Now, there's a lot of farmers very concerned, for example, about the increasing cost and the loss of fertilizers coming from the Middle East because of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, I get that. But isn't that a sign that perhaps we should be looking a bit more about mixed agriculture, about mixed farming, where you do it on site?
No, we need homogeneous farming. It's all this mixing, this crop mixing that's the problem. Okay? The corn stays with the corn, the pigs stay with the pigs. It's the way of nature. Now, some people will say I'm a farming supremacist. I'm not, okay? I just want my farm to be just my farm and my farm people. And your farm can be your farm people. Agricultural fascism is what we need. No seed mixing.
So to speak. In other words, you put the animal muck on the fields to grow the wheat rather than just growing wheat and have nothing else. You know, there's diversity is actually agricultural as well as natural diversity is something that's very important. So I get encouraged by those kind of things. And since I represent the smallest and most densely populated urban constituency, certainly in the UK, probably in Europe, I'm constantly encouraged by the children in the primary schools who want to grow things in their grow spaces, want their community gardens in the school grounds, and we've got them in every school. Fantastic. That's what we need. That's what we need and we want. So that we need to bring up a next generation that isn't frightened of bees, isn't frightened of insects, actually realizes that a tomato...
You should be frightened of bees. They're notorious loan sharks who prey on financially weak people. See, this is what he wants. He wants us all to be enslaved financially to the bees. The fuck am I talking about?
It comes from somewhere. You grow it in the soil. And that way you give kids that inspiration, they start thinking about lots of other things as well.
The amount of farmers too who want nature-friendly farming, they just want the investment in order to be able to do it.
Absolutely. They want to know two things: that they're going to get a reasonable price for their crops, that's fair, And I do believe actually in a state-supported price system to help farmers manage that. The post-war settlement on farming with the marketing boards wasn't all bad, because it meant the farmers knew exactly what they were going to get for milk, for wheat, for potatoes, for anything else. And in a sense, that may well start to come back. I mean, it's surely better that than leaving farmers...
Fuck off, Kieran. I will actually stab you up, son. Dickhead. I won't stab you. Just that was a joke, Twitch. Please don't ban me.
To the mercy of a price war between the supermarkets, because that's where they are.
Also, it's the League Cup. Who gives a fuck, you know? We got bigger fish to fry.
The moment.
Coming back to geopolitics, I want to ask you a question that it could sound like a question the Daily Mail would ask, but hopefully you'll hear it's not in that spirit. I'm sure the Daily Mail are watching and gripped to everything we're saying.
Listen, Daily Mail, are you watching this?
How should a Prime Minister deal with a Donald Trump? Because I think both of us would know that ultimately we wouldn't want anything to do with him. But
Cyanide? No, I'm only joking.
we also know that the reality is we do have to have some relationship with the United States. In fact, we need to leverage that relationship.
We don't play in the Johnston's Paint Trophy. Sharp.
In order to bring peace around the world. How do you balance this tightrope of holding a president to account, but also a president who undoubtedly has disproportionate amounts of power?
He's the president of the USA, and you have to have some kind of contact and some kind of relationship. You can't avoid it. But you can also do it by maintaining your self-respect.
Yeah. Kieran, I'm actually going to knock you out, bro. Shut the fuck up. You absolute cunt.
And I think the person that's done that best has been Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico.
True.
She has maintained her dignity. She's maintained her self-respect. And in return, actually, both presidents of Mexico, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador and Claudia, have been treated with more respect. By
Oh, it's Claudia.
On
first name terms, are we?
Because they don't take any nonsense.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone needs to learn a number of things from Mamdani. Firstly, don't kowtow to him. Don't fucking bow down to Trump. He doesn't respect it. Look at the people he does respect. Fucking wankers like Putin or Kim Jong-un. Strongmen, fucking pretend alpha dog, fucking bareback, fucking horse riding cunts, right? The thing that idiots think make you strong. So don't kowtow to him. Don't scurry around at his feet picking his fucking papers up. You're supposed to be a world leader, you cunt. Look, I'm sure Putin has fucked horses. If he disagrees, he can sue me. That would be an amazing cool case. Jesus Christ. Yeah, you stand up to him. He's a bully. Whoever beat a bully by backing down and letting him beat you up? A bully never stops unless you stop them.
You don't take any nonsense of these joint press conferences, which are a sort of ritual humiliation of the guest coming there. And they sort of pointed out that the US economy...
That's why, like, Carney's a prick, right? Trust me, we know here in the UK, he was the head of the Bank of England. He's a fucking tosser. But standing up to Trump and being like, okay, if you want to be a cunt about it, we'll go dollar for dollar with you. You want to be a prick? Okay, we can be a prick as well. That's the way to do it. Anyway. You support Pompey. Well, there you go. You've had some rough times yourselves in recent years. He was pro-Trump when he started bombing Iran. Oh, Carney, yeah. Like I say, Mark Carney's a wanker. Be under no illusions. I'm just saying the right approach to Trump is not to give in to him and just like sign whatever deal you like. No. If he wants to be a wanker and go, oh, well, we're going to tariff you this much, tariff him the same amount. Don't play a silly game Just say no. If you're going to act like a wanker, we're going to treat you like a wanker. Simple. It's the only way that works. If you give in to him, you'll just keep taking more and more and more.
Actually,
that's why I just really feel sorry in many respects for Ukraine, because there's nothing Ukraine can do in that situation. They absolutely need America's help. They can't call his bluff. They can't afford to. They have to keep him on side. Whereas Britain is in a situation where it can do that. We could just say to him, no, you can't use our fucking bases, you can't. You want to put tariffs on us? Okay, we'll tariff you back. Good luck trying to sell anything in the UK. But you don't, because the Keith was a wanker and fucking Burnham's a wanker. So they're not going to fucking do anything.
Depends on migrant workers, including millions of Mexicans. Now, Mexico has a very difficult hand to play. But I think fair play to her. She's done really well on that. Yes, of course you have to have some kind of relationship, but you also have to recognise that Trump regularly exceeds his own power. Mm-hmm. So he threw all this stuff around about tariffs. You remember the maps and the charts and all this? We're going to put tariffs here, tariffs there.
Penguins!
And so on. It turned out he didn't have the power to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Why didn't anybody challenge that at the time? What was Congress doing? What was the House and the Senate doing during that period when the president...
Well, the Congress is run by the GOP, which is just the MAGA party. So they were licking his balls.
Is clearly exceeding his authority. Aren't the checks and balances of this fabled constitution supposed to come into play at that point?
I think it doesn't get talked about enough, but that moment with Keir Starmer when he was Prime Minister of presenting Donald Trump with this state visit, I think it was the second state visit, and a lot of the commentariat, particularly the centrist commentariat, said this is a masterstroke. You know, Keir Starmer will be able to get what he wants from Donald Trump now because he's flattered his ego.
That worked well, didn't it?
Well, absolutely, and it didn't work at all. And so I'm curious what Andy Burnham's approach to him.
It is really nice to see the occasional little glimpse of the Jam Man, like reveling in the defeat of the guy who stabbed him in the back. That's all. That's nice. There's a nice moment of like joyful vindication in seeing him excited, taking the piss out of Keir Starmer. That's beautiful. Like that's a lot of years of frustration and all the rest of it built up. That he allows himself a little moment to just huff victory, you know. A Pyrrhic victory, some might say, but a victory nonetheless.
Will be, and I just really hope that it's a reset in relations and it isn't that same kind of tactic, because it doesn't work and it just embarrasses us as a country.
One hopes, and early signs of Burnham are that he's less interested or involved or obsessed with foreign policy than Starmer was. He'll hand quite a lot of that over to Ed Miliband. But I just want to give a message to Ed, because I hope he's watching this program. Ed, this book's in your office. Hope you get a chance to at least skim through it. I know you're very busy, but also Neve, Shahad, myself.
How does he know it's in his office? Has he got cameras? Has he bugged the Foreign Secretary's office and he knows the book's in there? I'm on to you, Corbyn, you sly fox.
I want to come and talk to you about it.
And I hadn't thought to ask you about this, but it's obvious that you know Ed Miliband pretty well. Do you have an assessment of how he'll be as Foreign Secretary?
He's got a lot of knowledge. He's got a lot of experience. He's got some very interesting family pressures on him. His brother David is much more right-wing than he is, and much more pro-American than Ed has ever been, as far as I'm aware. His late mother, who I knew very well, was also a wonderful peace activist and very pro-Palestinian. So let's see. I hope we're going to get something better on this, but Britain can't ever get over its imperial legacy, can't ever get over this idea that somehow or other we're very important all around the world.
Oh my God, Corbyn definitely watches my show. He definitely watches my show, because that's a thing I bang on about. Britain's obsessed with its trying to remain this big fucking fancy power. It's the reason we keep hold of nuclear weapons that we can't fucking afford. We're nothing. We're fucking irrelevant. Why are we trying to... We're trying to keep up with the Joneses, but without the fucking income of the Joneses. He did follow me on my original Twitter, that is true.
Because we're Britain. And some or other, because very good British lawyers helped to write a lot of the post-war documents, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, European Convention on Human Rights, Geneva Convention, all those things, and not to mention UN Charter, that some or other there's no danger of us ever being in violation of them. So when South Africa announced it was taking the genocide case out against...
You want charity boxing between Corbyn and Starmer? Well, the thing is, even though he's many years his junior, Starmer will absolutely get battered, because this is Starmer boxing. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, that is so bad. What are his wrists made out of? Fucking twiglets. Oh my god, that's all he can muster. Oh. Yeah, Corbyn would fucking absolutely lay him out.
Israel. There are a lot of MPs saying, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. How can you possibly criticise Israel for this? And then when I get up and say that I think Britain is also guilty of complicity, no, we can't be. Yes, we can. Yes, we can, and we are. We have supplied weapons that have committed acts of genocide against Palestinians.
How much of that do you think is education? I think lots of young people don't know a country's history, for better or for worse.
I think teaching history is key to so many things. I think history in the latter years of secondary school and universities is very well taught, fascinating, very interesting. But that's taught to the students who want to learn it. And so they're the ones who are exploring ideas. So you get a serious study of colonial history, a serious study of black history, a serious study of cultural history going on at those levels. Where history and geography are so important is actually in the primary school.
Right.
The primary school is the key area. Primary school, do we need to be bringing up our kids to say that every smart invention comes from Europe or North America?
Well, except the ones that some people claim are from brown people, but it's actually ancient aliens. A brown person couldn't have built a pyramid. That's crazy. No, it had aliens. The Great Wall of China, aliens. The Easter Island statues, aliens. Yep.
Industrial progress comes from Europe or North America? Or do we need our children to be brought up understanding that maths from Mesopotamia, architecture from Africa, from what we now call Latin America, so much chemistry and physics from China historically, and so on? The whole world process is where things come from. And you can teach geography and history in an interesting and quite exciting way, so you get children wanting to explore.
See, I genuinely, I'd always heard this ancient aliens thing, right? And I heard someone say it was racist, and I was like, racist? What? It's about aliens. Isn't it just a stupid show where they like pretend things were about aliens? No, it is just racist. Yeah. Like, it's literally, I only watched a couple of the episodes, but it was like, basically everything that a non-white person ever did was actually aliens. I don't know how they've managed to make weird conspiracy alien shit into, like, race science content, but they have. Yeah, Stonehenge is, like, the only, like, vaguely white people thing. And even then, they're a bit swarthy. They might have been Swedish, I don't know.
Instead, we have too much of this sort of Eurocentric view of history, which doesn't understand.
Well, that's the thing. The ancient Aryans, like the Aryans, did exist, right? And they were people from India and the Caucasus who moved into Europe and stuff, right? So this is where the Germans got this idea of Aryans. But the Aryans they talked about didn't exist. Like the idea that there was some like higher intellectual beings called the Aryans who had fantastic ancient technologies that were long lost and blah blah blah, and it was nonsense. Like, it was absolute nonsense. Literally, there's a fantastic snippet of a conversation that was heard where Hitler is complaining about a meeting he had with Mussolini, where Mussolini's going on about, oh, we just unearthed this Roman thing and that Roman thing, because for all of the problems of the Mussolini regime, and it's very funny that he ended up upside down, lols, 707's in chat on that one, but the fascists, obsessed with, you know, the glories of ancient Rome, because, you know, they had no fucking glories in the present day to look forward to, so they did a lot of archaeology, and they did discover a lot of old, like, Roman shit. And so Mussolini was sort of boasting to Hitler about this, and Hitler was very, very upset, because his archaeologists just kept digging up, like, signs of wooden hut infrastructure. like when the Romans were, like, building fucking huge palaces and colosseums and a fucking amphitheatre in every town and all this shit, the Germans were, like, scratching around living in wood huts and like fine, nothing wrong with that, but it's not the glorious Aryan heritage that they'd boasted about, you know. It's a little embarrassing by comparison.
The nature of what empire was about, the colonial legacy, or the way the colonial legacy affects our lives today, and encourages so much of the racist ideology, which in his simplistic way Tommy Robinson and company play into straight away. So I would look much more at giving children in primary schools particularly the excitement of exploration.
Well, J.R.R. Tolkien was actually relatively based when it came to Nazi shit. He was asked by Nazi publishers about his background and stuff, and he was asked whether he was Jewish, and he literally said, I have not the great privilege to be a member of that talented tribe, was his response. They declined to publish his books in Germany. Which I would say is a very significant plus. Even if there are some overtones of iffiness in his writings.
And they just love it. You know, when you give kids a chance, they want to do things. Can I give you one story about a primary school I went to? I obviously go to the primary schools in my area quite a lot. One of them, Newington Green Primary School, I went to years ago. And I went to speak to year 5, I think it was. And I was asked to talk about the environment. And so I did. I talked about global warming and biodiversity and so on. The kids go, oh, yeah. They just weren't, they didn't get it, you know. Yeah. And I was trying to explain that actually biodiversity was quite important. And the best question was, this kid said, okay, sir, what's the most important animal in the world? I said, the earthworm. What? I said, the earthworm. What? I said, why do you say that? I said, well, just imagine what the soil would be like if there was no burrowing animals. I said, why, what would it be like? I said, well, there wouldn't be any soil, it'd be concrete. I mean, it's a slight exaggeration, all of it, but it kind of made them think a bit. Anyway, fast forward, go back to the same school. I've been there many times. We went to the same issue a few years later. So I go into year 5, expecting to give them a talk about environment, the sort of talk that you or I would give. And the kids say, sit down, sir. Okay. Put me in the front row. They said, we've got the presentation ready for you. They were giving me a presentation.
Amazing.
They'd explored it all themselves. They'd been through global warming. They'd got the maps up. They'd got the whiteboard. They'd got the pictures. They got the...
Honestly, you need to beat children like that. Okay? Little cunts. You've got a member of parliament coming to speak to you, and you've decided you're going to put on a demonstration. No. You all get in the cage, and we'll turn the hoses on. You little fuckers. You precocious little pricks. Sit down and speak when you're spoken to. Why don't advertisers want to advertise with me? I could sell HelloFresh. No one can sell HelloFresh.
Videos. They'd prepared the whole thing. And I just said, well done. Wonderfully done. And I said, what now? They said, what are you going to do about it? Great question. So that is what good education in a good local state school can do.
I love that. It also reminds me, I was with Chris Packham last week, and he mentioned during
Oh, Chris Packham, friend. Oh, bird watching friend. Oh.
a speech, people say he's obsessed with the birds and the bees, and he said, well, I am. There are pollinators, and if you're not obsessed with them, they're a crucial part of our ecosystem. And I guess it's a similar story.
Yeah, but they meant fucking. So, you know.
Story to the earthworm, that sometimes these less kind of magnificent species are so vital to our existence on the planet.
I wrote a poem about a bee on a train, actually, and read it out in Glasgow last week. And they, to begin with, it was slightly weird. Then they got a big round of applause for it.
I love that. Finish.
I wrote a... What the fuck is... I wrote a poem about a bee on a train. Does it mean he wrote the poem on the train and it was about a bee? Or did he write a poem about a bee that was on a train? What? I don't know what's going on. My head hurts.
Finishing off, I want to come back to a tribunal, actually, but connect it to some of the things we've just spoken about. What is the role of unions here and workers? Like, how important is the workers' movement in raising these issues?
I think in Britain we are behind the curve, particularly compared to Europe. I was in Germany last month, where I was with IG Metall, which is the biggest union in Germany, which has a lot of membership in the manufacturing industry, roughly speaking equivalent.
Well, you should know it's pronounced IG Metall. Poor form, Jeremy. And I know that because I've met workers from the Munich BMW motorcycle factory who are members of that union, so... Desperately, stop it, Kieran.
To unite in its importance and size. And they were having a conference about war and militarism, which I was invited to speak at, obviously to listen to the conference as well, which I did. And they were also very much in solidarity with the people of Palestine and getting a lot of abuse for it, but also mounting a campaign against conscription in Germany, which is being actively talked about at the moment. And so it is about union membership and union attitudes and union issues. But it's also important to remember, if you've got a job and you're driving a polluting vehicle, you've got a job driving a polluting vehicle. If you've got a job working in an aircraft factory which is making F-35s, you've got a job making F-35s. It could be there was no other job available. It could be you had no choice in that matter. And so when I was
True, Packham lays pipe. Packham can get it.
To develop an arms conversion strategy for the Labour Party, which has historically been done in the past, Lucas Alternative Plan and many others over the years. I said, look, actually, this is going to be very complicated and going to be very expensive. But if we're going to do it, you've got to start from the position of guaranteeing the jobs and the work of those people while you convert those industries. You can't go to somebody who's driving a diesel lorry and say it's all your fault. No, it's not your fault. You happen to be driving a diesel lorry. It's all of our fault that you're driving something that is dangerously polluting for the health of young people in our society. And so you cannot do it by leaving it to the market. Margaret Thatcher's whole idea was that you would solve the problems of environmental sustainability by leaving it all to the market.
That's because Margaret Thatcher was a fucking idiot. Can we have some lulls in chat for that cunt being dead?
And Dennis Skinner used to say something that was quite witty, actually. He said, you can't fix the ozone hole with a man, a bike and an enterprise allowance.
Nice. Did you cross over as an MP with Margaret Thatcher?
Yes.
What was she like?
Oh.
Think about the years. I'm sorry, Zachary, that's unacceptable. He already told you earlier on he became an MP in 1983. So he was an MP for most of her time as Prime Minister. For shame. For shame, sir.
Oh, very formidable, very well informed and very quick. And also, unlike many of her predecessors and successors, she absolutely believed in what she was doing. She was totally wrong.
Right.
Totally wrong on industry, totally wrong on society, obviously totally wrong about poll tax and so on, but she totally believed it. I remember Tony Benn once saying, well, he said, well, actually, the thing about Thatcher is she believes in what she's doing. And so you have to confront her with an alternative.
Oh, Tony Benn friend. Oh. Some of the most egregious name dropping in this one. Unbelievable. But he was thinking to himself, well, he's just dropped Packham on him. You know what I'm going to do? Just going to bring out cheeky Tony Benn. Let's go, bitch. What you got for me?
Ideology and an alternative philosophy. And that was not what was done. There was too much demonizing of her as an individual. Well, you can demonize any individual. You, me, anybody can do that. It doesn't actually change anything.
Yeah.
It'll just demonize somebody else after that. You've actually got to have a coherent philosophy of the kind of society you want to live in and how you're going to get people to go with you on that journey. And that's where grassroots activism, peace activism, and hopes are so important. My inspiration comes from...
Oh, he's trying to bring hope, is he? So Hitler. So Hitler.
People around the world who stand up against the greatest adversity in my own community or anywhere around the world. And our book, The Gaza Tribunal, is for the people of Palestine so that they get through this ghastly period of their lives and eventually we come out at the other side. Because otherwise we are complicit in the genocide of the people of Gaza.
I'm sure I'll be speaking for anyone who watches or listens to this. Thank you so much for all your work over the years, and particularly with the Gaza Tribunal. If someone wants to support now, what's the best way for them to support?
Get the book. It's available online. It's from the Peace and...
Usually when you want to support him, you extend your arm with your hand outstretched and flattened. That is usually the sign that you support this man. I had to get one more in. I had to get one last one.
Justice Project, and we're having our Peace and Justice Project conference in September, which will also be including a session with the three of us on the panel. And that's September the 19th and 20th at Queen Mary University. And if you want to do an event with the book in a local bookshop or so on, we're very happy to do our best to oblige on that, because what we want to do is provoke contribution to discussion, so we put pressure on the British political system to end our complicity with the genocide.
Thank you very much.
See, he might have lost his way in some areas, Corbyn, but there's still some of the old magic there. It's like watching a footballer past their prime. It's like when you see fucking, fat Maradona at fucking Sevilla or wherever. Like, he's a coked up mess of a man, but there's just the occasional little touch of the ball, and you just think, there's still something there. Some of the old magic still in those fucking feet.
Very much. I didn't expect us to be talking about Margaret Thatcher and you kind of slightly praising her. So it's been an excellent conversation. I know you weren't praising her, but praising the...
I know what you mean, yeah.
In fact, our friend Yanis Varoufakis, when he was on this show, said...
Oh, Greek friend. Oh.
He admired that she fought for her class, which I thought was interesting.
She was a class warrior,
yeah,
that's for sure.
Exactly.
She absolutely was a class warrior. Yes.
So anyway, we discussed Margaret Thatcher, we discussed Palestine, we've been everywhere. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
My pleasure,
Cheers.
thank you.
That was actually really good. I don't know what anyone got out of my contribution to the discussion, but I enjoyed that. And I hope you all did too. Again, there's something about Corbyn that I still quite like. Like, he's definitely lost his way with some of the weird shit with your party, my party, up your arse party, but yeah, he's a good lad, I think, mostly. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to bed. It's gone midnight. I need to start streaming earlier again. Yeah, I've got to start going a bit earlier, I think, because I'm always too fucking tired at the end. I'll send you over to Helena on the YouTubes. Go and say hello to No Justice. And on Twitch, who have we got going? Soros is going, so I'll send you them. Yeah, and yeah, I will see you all tomorrow, hopefully with Gareth Dennis, and then on Friday with Krista. Stay beautiful. Free Palestine. No pass around.